John Black, founding partner of Daly and Black, a law firm here in Houston.
Perfect, perfect. And what do you all specialize in?
So our law firm primarily deals with first-party insurance, meaning we represent policyholders that sue insurance companies around the state.
So let me ask you, if a tree falls onto someone's property, onto their home, but it's on a neighboring property, traditionally, who is responsible for that damage?
We are getting that question almost every day. It really is kind of something you can view as being in two separate buckets. Whether bucket one is, was it an act of God? Situations where it really was just the wind that knocked it over, it could be a lightning strike, but whatever that act of God was, it caused it to fall onto your property. If it's simply an act of God, it's your responsibility. Even if the tree was on somebody else's property. Texas law says that, if the tree was properly maintained and there was nothing wrong with the tree except that a hurricane rolled through and blew it over onto your property, you're responsible for paying for it, which means in most instances, you've got to make the insurance claim, let your insurance company know about the damage, and it's going to be something that falls on you. There's bucket two, which are situations where there was some act of negligence. That just means that your neighbor didn't do something or did something that caused the tree or contributed to the tree falling. So examples of that might be the neighbor didn't maintain the tree limbs. The neighbor didn't properly care for the tree. It rotted. It was more readily able to fall over and land in your property. In situations where you think your neighbor did something wrong or failed to do something wrong, which we just call negligence, in those instances, it may be your neighbor's fault, at least partly. And so in situations where you think that may have happened, we suggest that clients either talk to their neighbor first, and if they can't do that, then, they might have to resort to litigation or some other kind of adversarial mechanism.
Well, thank you so much for breaking that down, because
Yeah.
that was honestly, it was a surprise to many of us to find out, wait a minute, act of God, and it's my fault, even if it's from the other
I
side. So
know.
thank you for breaking that down.
I know.
Let me ask you this. You know, what if a neighbor, if it falls on someone's property and they look into the neighboring property and it happens to be owned by an LLC in a vacant lot? In those situations, if someone's having trouble tracking down, I guess, an address or phone number to be able to actually get a hold of that person to be able to start whatever process, what resources do they have? I mean, at that point, do they have to hire an attorney if they can't track down the person?
The answer is maybe. A lot of times properties held by LLCs or entities, sometimes because they're investment properties, sometimes because the owners don't want you to know who owns it. And so in those instances, we recommend you go to the Secretary of State website. Sometimes you can get information about who owns the LLC. It's almost always the case that a state registered entity like an LLC will have a registered agent. Okay. And you can go online to the Secretary of State's website and you can figure out who the registered agent is. That's the person that the company, the LLC, is designated as that person that is to receive notices. So find that person on the Secretary of State's website, try to make contact with them, either by mail, email, phone, whatever you can. And if that still doesn't work, you might have to file some kind of proceeding, a lawsuit or something like that to figure it out. Because oftentimes they won't respond to just an inquiry. Hey, whose tree is it? They'll just ignore it.
Got you. Thanks for breaking that down, because we're speaking to somebody today who's kind of trying to figure out how she can get more information on this LLC. So thank you for breaking that down.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
switching gears here now, when it comes to just overall, people who are looking to file insurance claims, looking to get their just payment from insurance, what recommendations do you have for them? What do they need to know right now following the hurricane?
Yeah, so step one is file your claim, right? If you've got damage, let your insurance company know quickly. And the reason you got to do that is, one, it puts them on the clock. there are laws that say that they've got to do certain things by certain deadlines. So once they're on the clock, their job is to come out, inspect the property, assess the damage, figure out what is covered, what is not, and then how much they owe you. And so we tell people, step one is make your claim. Step two is document your own damages. Go around with your phone or a camera, if people still have those these days, and literally just photograph or video the areas that you think are damaged, right? Kind of start doing a self-assessment. Step three is we always recommend that you get a truly unbiased third-party opinion about the damage. You can get that from a contractor, a roofer. There are a lot of reputable companies in town that will come out and assess your damage and tell you this is what was caused by the storm and this is what it's going to cost to repair it. And the reason we ask that you do that is most insurance companies, we hope, will do the right thing, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes they don't pay what they owe, or they'll nickel and dime or underpay a claim that you make. In those instances, it's really important to have an independent third party's kind of assessment of what your damages are so that you can use that to negotiate, hopefully reach a resolution with the insurance company.
Awesome. Thank you for that information. And I guess, would you say in these times, patience is kind of a virtue? Because we're getting a lot of folks saying, they're frustrated, like that the insurance companies are moving very slow. They're not allowing them to get their contractors in to make any repairs. What would you say to folks who are maybe starting to get a little antsy, a little frustrated right now in the insurance process?
I am a fourth generation Houstonian. I've been here almost all my life. We've seen storms like this, and we know how to get through them. But it always requires patience, right? It always requires patience from you and your family members. And the problem is, at some point that patience runs out. And so I certainly understand that as a lawyer and personally as a resident here. But I would say this, I mean, insurance companies have an obligation to do certain things within a certain amount of time. Typically, once you give them notice, and once they've come out and inspected your property, they really have about 30 days to make a decision about whether or not to pay the claim or not. And so if you really find, yourself in a situation where your insurance company is dragging its feet, they just refuse to come out, they've come out and they've just spent months and months not getting you the information you need. In those situations, it's totally appropriate to talk to an adjuster, a public adjuster, or a lawyer to see what your rights are because, yes, we're all expected to have patience, but when you buy insurance, you have rights too. And so you're certainly well within your rights to enforce them.
And maybe my last question here, a lot of people may want to reach out to an attorney in these times. They may want to say, because they feel they're not being treated fairly by an insurance company or by whoever. Sometimes they may think they can't afford it, but in the state, they may be able to have attorneys such as yourself paid for by the insurance companies. Is that true? And can you explain that for the folks?
Yeah, that's close to being right. The Texas law allows a policyholder, right? Someone that has an insurance policy, a homeowner, to collect attorney's fees back from the insurance company if they're successful in prosecuting an insurance claim. That's under Section 542 of the Insurance Code. So yes, technically you are entitled to recover your insurance, or I should say your attorney's fees in many cases. That being said, most lawyers that do this kind of work will look at your case, will assess whether you have a case, and will help you on a contingent fee basis, meaning they only get paid if they win, right? That's all we do. And so most lawyers will bet on their time and experience to get you a result. And I would recommend that you talk to somebody like that because they're not going to charge you. And they're betting on their ability to get a successful resolution for you. So yes, Texas law allows for it, but a lot of good lawyers out here do that kind of work, kind of betting on the come on a contingent fee basis. And that's what I would suggest people look into.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Were there any other tips you wanted to add by any chance?
I would say one last thing. We see a lot of homeowners trying to do their own repairs. I hear stories about homeowners getting on their own roofs. And while it's good to do minimal repairs to prevent further damage, I give the example of putting a tarp over a window to prevent water from coming in, things of that nature. Serious repairs, document them and be done. Don't try to do them yourself. You don't have a legal obligation to do that. And, unfortunately, we run into so many situations where people get hurt or make things worse by trying to do those repairs on their own. So leave it to the professionals.